What is it really like to be married to a neurosurgeon and be beside someone who's chasing an all-encompassing career like neurosurgery? Today's conversation goes beyond typical medicine and into hardship, sacrifice, isolation. I have a very special guest today, my wife, who has been through this since before I even started taking pre-med classes. So I'm excited to share this conversation with you. Thanks, Rebecca, for joining us.
My pleasure.
So I wanted to go back to, if you can remember, way back in medical school,
Okay.
when I first mentioned the idea of neurosurgery and you first heard that word. What went through your head at that point?
I wasn't surprised knowing you. I thought maybe having seen you really tried to do so many different things and succeed at all of those, I thought, okay, where's this guy going to go with this medical school thing? Cardiothoracic surgery, orthopedics, because you're an athlete. So when you said neurosurgery, I think I was a little bit surprised because it hadn't been on my list of items that I was like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to go into, but it made perfect sense. And of course, it's one of the longest, if not the longest, residency programs, so it all seemed to track.
Did you have any idea what that meant for us and what we were in for at that point?
No. I mean, I think you had just started, you were probably a second year? I wasn't going to say 2L, you were probably a second year med student when you started to think about what you wanted to do. And so I had this concept of like, okay, maybe it would be a harder residency to get into, but I mean, I had no idea what to expect.
And what were the reactions? Was it like, this is cool, or this is scary, or am I ever going to see him, or it's cool to tell my friends my husband's a brain surgeon, or what was going on in your head?
Yeah, those were fair. I think a little bit of everything. I think at that point I was already like a baby lawyer. I'd already finished law school and was doing my own thing. And I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I was like, God, these hours are long. This is an intense work. I want to have kids. Maybe it's great. My husband wants to be a brain surgeon. We'll fast forward through all the years of residency and training, and then maybe
just ignore
those. And then, cool, I'll just be like living the easy life as the brain surgeon's wife.
I mean, it's Grey's Anatomy, right?
Have you ever watched Grey's Anatomy?
No.
You have no idea what you're talking about. Although McDreamy is, anyway, you are my McDreamy. Yeah, which is funny because I actually don't want to be a stay-at-home spouse or parent, but at the time I was like, oh good, I'll have choices.
Fair enough. Let's fast forward a little bit. So I went off to interview at some neurosurgery programs, and I think that you had the opportunity to speak with some partners of neurosurgery residents. What were those conversations like?
Well, we have to set the stage a little bit and back up. I mean, I wasn't even pregnant then, I think, because we had our first child when you graduated med school.
Right. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing, I know, right? Well, biological clock. So I was like, all right, this is it. So you and I are both from New York City. My whole family's there. Your whole family was there. And I was staring down the barrel of, okay, my husband's going to be in this intense program for 7 years at least. And I know I want to start having kids, or I can't wait until he's done with his residency. So what should we do about that? Where do I want to continue my career and have my first child? And do I want to be alone for that? Maybe we could do it somewhere close to home. Or maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I'll get like great relationships with the spouses of other neurosurgery residents and it'll be fine. So you connected me with, it's pretty sexist, but I mean, it really was all the wives. Like there are very few, I don't think I saw or talked to any house husbands or other, neurosurgery husbands. It was all neurosurgery wives. And they could not have been lovelier. I know that their spouses and partners really wanted you to join that program. So I think they were also trying to convince me like, oh, this would be a great place to move to. It would be really nice. But they used a phrase several times that really threw me off, which was, come join our neurosurgery widows club. And that probably, that did not sit well with me.
What images did that conjure up in your head?
Well, it was not what I had expected. And it was very much like, oh, okay, there's some reality coming up that I'm never going to see my husband and that he's not going to be a part of whatever family life we create for the next 7+ years. So that was a wake-up call.
Yeah, not generally what you want to hear for your future.
No, and these women couldn't have been lovelier, but...
Did you have a sense of how they were getting through it and whether they had certain coping mechanisms, or did they have any tips for you, or was it just come hang out with us and be lonely together?
Yeah, I think it was the latter, and that really rubbed me the wrong way because at the time, I still wanted to practice. I mean, I'm still practicing. It's many years later. So I wanted to practice, and I was thinking to myself, they seem to have created a really nice life for themselves all together, and they all had young children, and they were all, moms together, and it was a really nice village and sense of community. I wasn't ready to consider something like that yet because I still wanted to further my career. So I was like, thank you so much. I'll never talk to you again. So that was, but I think, yeah, they really just, they created a sense of community. They would do, Tuesday night potlucks and Friday night, movie nights. And so they basically just existed as if their husbands weren't there, but they were all there together only because of what their husbands had chosen to do. Yeah. I imagine it's similar to military spouse life in that sense, but not quite as difficult in the sense of like those individuals are gone for actually physically gone, not just physically and temporarily physically gone, so to speak.
Yeah. What did your family or friends think when they heard about this plan that we might be moving thousands of miles away, and I was going to be doing this program, and you were going to be working with a baby, and all of this stuff?
Yeah, they were concerned. I mean, I think everybody was very excited for you, but we were starting to see personality traits of individuals who choose neurosurgery, and the drive and the focus has to be so all-encompassing that they were very concerned that I would end up like very lonely and alone. So they really encouraged me to try to find a residency program that was, within a train ride away of family and friends. And then I think I took it a little further, and I basically said to you, I was like, you were at Columbia Med School at the time, and I was like, cool, you need to pick a residency program in Manhattan. And I think of which there are like 3.
Easy to do.
Yeah, 3. And you're like, there are 2 spots, honey. There are 2 spots per year per program, or maybe 4 program. I don't know, but you were like
2.
Yeah. So then you were like, okay, there's 4 to 6 spots max per out of the whole country. And I was like, you can do it. And you did. So to your credit, you did.
It worked out.
Yeah. So.
Since you brought up personality traits of neurosurgeons, I just have to ask you, you've been around many neurosurgeons now, and you have impartial observer status. What is your impression of the neurosurgeon's personality traits in general, without naming names, of course?
No, God, no. Well, look, I mean, these are incredibly smart individuals, and I would say intelligent in a lot of ways too. I'm not going to break down my definition of what I think is the difference between smarts and intelligence, but I think that there's, they're very book smart, they're very good at retaining information, they're very focused, and often I found that a lot of your colleagues, it was hard to hold conversations with them. They're not I wouldn't say it's a bunch where you walk into a room and there's just like sparkling personalities and you could spend hours, but chatting about anything or nothing. It was a little bit like pulling teeth, but overall, very kind, nice people overall.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. Let's get into residency a little bit. So residency was 7 short years. I can barely remember them because I don't think I had any short-term memory processing at that point. What were those 7 years like for you? I know I don't even know if I remember what they were like for me anymore, but I'm more curious how they were from your standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we have to focus this question. I think that's pretty all. It was, it feels like it was sort of like a battle that you had to go through together. I felt very protective of you and for you for all that you were going through because, I mean, it was such a physical, emotional, and mental toll on you at all times but then at the same time, I would get resentful of you every second. It all felt like, it really felt like it was all about Andrew all the time because everything revolved around what you could or couldn't do in your schedule. So you start as an intern and you're the lowest on the totem pole. And so it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be home for Christmas this year and I'm going to be working all through this holiday and that holiday. But next year I'll have the second pick of I'll have the second to last pick, not the last pick of holidays. But then it would always just be something. So it was like, okay, I can't count on having him home for Christmas until he's a 4th year. And then something else would happen, something else. So, and that's just part of the hierarchy of it. But the hierarchy really bothered me. The structure of it bothered me. The trial by fire, it was just really hard to see the hours. I think that New York State or maybe federally, they had passed some sort of mandatory maximum working hours for what I thought was residents, but it turned out was only for interns. And so every time you spent more than like 36 hours at the hospital at a time, I would just become livid. And I was like, how is this not, in direct contravention with like what the rules are? And then you'd always have some answer like, oh, well, it's because whatever. There was always some loophole. And I was like, this is bullshit. So I really hated that.
You're the lawyer. You're used to the loopholes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it didn't benefit me this time. So it was really frustrating. And
what would you say you were livid at me, at the situation, at neurosurgery as an institution, all of those?
Probably a little bit of everything at the same time. I mean, I knew it was worthwhile and I was really proud of you and proud of us. But yeah, because it had to be all about you and I wanted to see you and see my husband, like I would have to learn, and my friends also in my friend group and family group had to learn to adapt to whatever Andrew's schedule was. So, I think it was very important for me to maintain a life for myself and to continue my, my career. And then I guess by residency, we had our daughter. And so I was busy doing all that stuff, but no matter what, everything stopped and dropped when you were free. So it's like, okay, Andrew's got his first day off in 6 weeks. Oh, sorry, we had, something I really wanted to attend or a birthday party or a career furthering activity. But it was like, nope, that's it. Andrew's off that day. Let's hope he's awake. But I'm going to say, no, I can't do that because I want to be, that's the day I can see you.
Yeah. And I remember that being a lot of pressure for me as well, because it's finally a day off and then I haven't seen you or by the end of residency, children in days or sometimes weeks. And then, my body is telling me I just want to sleep and relax and maybe even go to the gym or do something and feeling like I had to really be on for you and for the family as much as possible. And I think that's actually when I started drinking coffee and why I started drinking coffee was just so I could actually be
say something else.
awake.
I was like, you don't drink alcohol really. So it's okay.
There was no time for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to be awake enough. It was easy to be awake for neurosurgery because the adrenaline is there. But when you finally take a breath, then it's, it feels like a lot of pressure to be on for the family. How did you process all of the emotions that came along with that? And how should somebody in your position, how can they kind of get through this? Is there anything that helped you or any advice you would have for people in your former position?
No, I mean, what you bring up is really valid. And I definitely put a lot of pressure on you to spend every waking moment of your free time with the family, which, is not healthy for a marriage or a person in general. Like you have to breathe. But so I suppose my advice would be to try to have as much grace as possible and realize that your spouse also needs a little bit of downtime and lack of structure and just forgiveness. But also you've got to be kind to yourself and know you have to state your needs and you have to set your expectations and then also be maybe realistic with what you can get, because I would put so much pressure on you and be like, I need you home. Like, I don't want you, whatever it was, like, I need you home. Please make sure you're there for something. And then, you'd be physically present, but not all there.
Yeah.
It was like not even just the emotional piece. That's a whole other part of neurosurgery, I think, that where you have to close off. But like, you were just a zombie. You were so tired. And so I'm like, God, I should have just.
Not the best version of myself.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you handle zombie Andrew during all that time? I mean, I honestly barely even remember it.
I know. No, I think it took years to really understand. I mean, like, we've had the benefit of knowing each other a really long time since, like you started this saying before you even started pre-med classes, we were together. But it's the same time, like you're constantly learning about your partner as they grow and as you grow. And so, now in my 40s, I have a lot more grace and patience than I did in my 20s. And so that was not as just understanding. So how did I do it? I think it was pretty hard, and I was constantly baseline angry all the time.
Yeah, I believe it. Was there a sense in your mind like it's going to get better, just have to survive this time, and then there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Or was that part of what helped you survive, or was it just one day at a time kind of thing?
No, I think so. I think it was very much like, and then you take the wins where you can get them and you set the goals at smaller increments. I think that helped me a lot. So like I was saying, like, okay, you're not an intern anymore. Yay. Now you're sorry, I keep saying 2L, like it's law school, but you're
PGY2.
PGY2. Thank you. Postgraduate year 2. So I was like, okay, he's a PGY2, that's good, but let's wait till he's a PGY4 and then he'll get like halfway pick of all the vacations. And PGY5 at certain programs is an educational year, so maybe you'll have a couple more hours of flex time to, or you're not actually standing up and doing 12-hour surgery. So it's like you take the wins. I would just search for them wherever I could. I was like, let's get through this 6 months. Let's get through that 6 months. And then, And of course, I don't think everybody in my family made it easy on you. I remember having a lot of conversations, like with my dad in particular, being like, it's just another 6 years and then he'll make a salary. And then it's just another 5 years and 4 years and 3 years, and it's, understandable for a parent to want the stability for their child. But it's also like, I could have used a little bit more understanding and grace from certain members of my family too, with just saying like how hard you're working.
Yeah. I mean, I was certainly under a lot of pressure at the hospital, but you were under an immense amount of pressure. I mean, we had 2 children. You were working full time. You were making the household run in every way, including financially. And then you had to deal with your own happiness and a husband who was, physically and largely emotionally absent. That's a lot.
I mean, yes, and I'm really glad we made it through. I would never doubted we would. It was a lot, but it was just sort of like, I think, you have your eyes on the prize of doing something worthwhile. I was really happy for you. I mean, I like being a lawyer, but I'm not directly impacting. I mean, I love my pro bono work when I had the chance to do more of it, but you're not directly impacting people on a daily basis the way you are. And I'm just happy that you get the opportunity to do that, and it's financially remunerative in a way that I think is fair, considering how hard you worked and how much time you put in. So it's like, okay, he's doing something worthwhile. He's going to create this thing, and it's going to benefit all of us because it'll allow us to have an interesting, diverse and stable life.
So would you say that it was worth it? That's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a hard question. I think it's worth it if your partner is. I mean, once you set your mind to something, there's really no deterring you, nor should there be. And so I think it was worth it because this was the path that you were going to take no matter what.
Okay. Have things gotten better? For the people that are in the midst of the storm, does the storm quiet down once residency is over, or is it, from your perspective, a never-ending storm?
Oh, no, definitely. Absolutely. And I remember you being a PGY7 on the cusp of graduating or going to fellowship and meeting the spouses of some of the interns and the PGY2s. And I just had so much empathy for them, and I wanted to impress upon them it gets better. And but it's hard to do that without sounding, patronizing or whatever. But I did try to impart on them, like, call me anytime, whatever you need. And it does get better. I mean, come on, once you're not a resident, even fellowship was much more, it was just like there's more breathing room in fellowship because you're pursuing something exactly in which, you're interested in. And I feel like from the medical community, there's sort of more of a respect for fellows, of course. I mean, residents and interns are, you're there to do the scut work and not till you're a senior resident do you really get any respect. But by fellowship, the teams are really excited to have you, and you might be publishing or doing something, and like you're helping a team in a way that's more mutually beneficial. So it felt like you were more appreciated for your role at the hospital once you were a fellow. And I think you brought that home too, and it was just sort of a calm.
Yeah. And now as an attending, there's, I guess, an impression that we have more control over our lives and things are more predictable. From, I think, our standpoint, the boss is always the patients, and they come first. And if they're having an issue or a complication or something unexpected happens, we always have to deal with that and take care of them. So that adds a certain level of uncertainty and unpredictability to life. Have you found that now in attendinghood, things are better than they were, or are there still challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's 100%, but it's better because the focus is squarely where, from a layperson's perspective, it should be. It should be on the patient. From my perspective as your spouse, when you were a resident, there was patient, but there's so many layers. There's like your every PG who's above you, and then there's there's a residency director, and then there's the department chair, and it was like the stress was coming from every angle when you're in residency. But now the stress is much more, yes, there's politics. Yes, every program and hospital has politics, like any organization in the world. But it does feel like it's easier for me as your spouse to understand. If a complication arises or if you just have a really challenging case, it's like, well, yeah, that sounds yikes.
Yeah, and that's certainly the hardest part of the job is when unexpected things happen or somebody doesn't do well. Do you feel like I'm more awake and there more than I used to be? I mean, I remember showing up to a Christmas party during residency where I think I hadn't slept more than 3 hours.
Oh, it was your 6th year?
Every night for about a week. And I remember I had, blepharospasm with the eyelid twitching, and I had styes all over my eyes. And I think I had just recovered from shingles.
Sorry to
and
laugh.
My body was in open revolt, basically.
Yeah.
And I was, at this party trying to pretend I was awake and having a good time. And it's amazing I actually remember it. But, that's kind of where it got to. And I don't recall it being that way for a while recently.
Oh.
Like, it does get better, right?
100%.
I think.
100%. I mean, there's so much there. I remember that party from the other side where I was like, are you kidding me that we have to go to this party? Because I am baseline resentful or angry at all of your superiors and, just the whole institution of residency in the United States. Like everything I was pissed off about the whole thing. And you were working so hard and you were on call that night. So it was like, we had to go to this party and you had to go straight back to the hospital. And I was like, are you? And so, yeah, that was, no, but it's gotten much better. You seem much happier and you're more of yourself. I mean, I've had people in my family, like my brother, my sister, over the last 5 years remark to me like, I had no idea that this part of Andrew even existed. And they've said this about multiple facets.
He can talk and be awake.
Everything. And just you had to be a very condensed version of yourself, I think, in order to achieve and just get through. And now you're exploring. Maybe it was always there, or maybe I think you're also discovering new parts of yourself. So, And also now that you have more time and there's sort of the worst is quote unquote over, I'm hopefully not putting as much pressure on you to spend every waking moment with the family. Like you actually have a lot of hobbies that you do that have nothing to do with me or the kids. And I think that's good for you.
Our children are not babies anymore. They're more autonomous. I wanted to talk a little bit more about what you referred to before with the emotional availability. So we had talked about, physical absence, which is obviously a thing, but just as important, if not more so, is the emotional absence during residency and I don't know, maybe still. But what is that like from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a really complicated one. And I'm so pleased it has gotten better. I think it's very challenging for people in your position because a lot of patients complain that their surgeons are robots, that their surgeons have no bedside manner. And that's sort of like a trope about surgeons and particularly like intricate type surgeries like, neurosurgery. And so, or high pressure, whatever. And I see that as a defense mechanism and a preservation. And not defense mechanism, that's not the right word, but sort of just like a way to protect yourself because you can't have a bleeding heart every day you wouldn't survive. Like you have to create some sort of a wall. And so I think you're an incredibly thoughtful and empathetic and caring person. And I've seen you in the last 5 years, I'm going to say receive awards from your organization about, really caring for patients and having excellent bedside manner. And that doesn't surprise me at all. And I hope you can retain that. But I don't know how you can retain it it's almost like not possible while you're a resident because you're under so much pressure and you don't know what you're doing all the time that you have to create this shell, or at least this is what I told myself. So then you'd come home and, well, I guess just slight digression, there'd be, I would say 9 times out of 10, if you were home before I was and I came in the door, it would be half an hour before you'd look up and realize, you'd be like, hey, when'd you get home? And I'm like, yeah. So like you would be, I don't know if it was the fatigue or just that you're so in your own head. And then I think that translates into the emotional availability where it's like you were so used to cutting yourself off and cutting off like the feelings that I felt like I had to constantly remind you like, hey, we need to go deeper here. This is not all, we can't have a surface level marriage. That's not going to work.
What were you able to wake me up out of the slumber and was I able to be emotionally available during that time and what did that look like if so or not?
I think I asked a lot of you, but you rose to the occasion. I think you really tried. I think to your credit, you really just tried to communicate, which is not maybe your forte or fortes of many neurosurgeons. I don't know. And also,
what is emotional availability? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to someone like me who may not know what that means as much?
Ability to show vulnerability, ability to ask for help, ability to know your limits when you've hit a wall, all of which I think are diametrically opposed to what is required of you as a resident. Like you didn't call in sick one day or something out of the 7 years. I mean,
we weren't allowed to call in sick.
That's what I'm saying.
You were either in the emergency room being treated or you were working, but either way you were in the hospital.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so it's like, how do I say, like, I want you to talk to me and be open and blah, 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 and let me know that you have needs or limits when you couldn't do that for most of the rest of your life. So I think it was almost an impossible task I put upon you, but the fact that you recognized that you were failing at it was actually helpful.
Not sure I did, but maybe I do now.
No.
But vulnerability basically is a core part of it, which, as a surgeon, we don't often show vulnerability with our patients, or we're not really trained to show vulnerability. You're kind of like this person in a suit of armor there to save the day, not supposed to be somebody who's struggling with XYZ. No patient the morning of surgery wants their surgeon to come in and talk about their vulnerability and struggles and things like that, even though we are human beings.
And yet it could be useful. I mean, I think that kind of hubris that that comes with it is detrimental to the patient, because I think as a surgeon, one of a surgeon's greatest strengths is knowing his or her limits. I'm not going to try to get that last piece of tumor out because it's too close to whatever. I can't speak about it in the way, but I think that vulnerability is incredibly important to patient outcome in general. So, but no, it's always, and also being afraid to take the blame. I think it appeared to me as watching you go through residency that it was like, no matter what, like blame someone else. Somebody's always at fault. Like we never own up to a mistake. And it was like, what? I don't know.
Yeah, that's not a healthy environment, and I think it can be tempting in our field when we're in situations in morbidity and mortality conference, for example, and things like that, where or a potentially legal situation where you feel like you have to be careful about taking the blame or admitting certain things, and you're a lawyer. I have to be careful at home about what I say on the record.
No, it just seems like a shame. I think that residency programs would do. What do I know? From an outsider's point of view, it seems like it would do better to foster an environment where you feel safe. Yeah. That was not the impression I got from your two friends from college, 2 to 3 friends from college, all went through neurosurgery residency at the exact same time as you, or a couple years ahead maybe because you took some time off. But I mean, it didn't seem like their programs were any, I don't want to say softer, but had any of those focus on softer skills.
Yeah, the psychological safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that is not something that is stressed generally in neurosurgery or during residency in particular, is psychological safety. And I think that the justification is that, we have to make doctors resilient and tough to be able to deal with the hours, the emotional stress, all the challenges that come with the job. But I think what you're saying is that the psychological safety and the vulnerability can actually be helpful for the job and for the patients.
Not my place to say, but it certainly would have made my life easier as the spouse or the partner of somebody going through this. And also, I can see logically there appear to be some benefits. I think that people more well informed in your field there's a lot of opportunity there they could delve into. All
right, so let's get back to you and me. So,
really? I don't know.
Do you think we're still paying the price for all those residency years? Do you think there's inevitable wounds I feel like all couples will have? Do you feel like it's possible for the people that go through this and that deal with all the wounds that happen, it's possible to heal those, or are there things that linger and it's kind of forgive but don't forget kind of things?
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's definitely a way to heal, but I think it absolutely makes us stronger. I mean, I think that feeling like we've gone through something like this together, and like we've both earned this in a way, like in different ways. I mean, but we both earned it, and it makes me more grateful for the times that we have together. It makes me more grateful for the times that you are available. And yeah, I think that there's still some old wounds that are having trouble. I mean, yeah, every time you come up with a new hobby or a new let's even like this, for example, I mean, this, discussing it in this podcast and this endeavor, like I approached it with I'm a little circumspect. I'm like, okay, like what's this going to mean? And when you were a fifth year, I think, or I don't know, you were thinking about what you were going to do during your educational year, and we finally had gone out to dinner, and you were so tired, and it was just like, it was good that we were physically both there, but it was not a very useful, I mean, it wasn't like a let's reconnect dinner, but we got the babysitter, your mom was there and doing all that stuff. And then you say to me, okay, well, I'm really thinking about this, and I think I'm going to have 20 extra hours a month or something to myself during my educational year. And so I've decided I'm going to go for an MBA. And you're like, I'm going to get my joint, MD, MBA. And
that went over well, I remember.
I had never, and I'm not super, I mean, I think I burst out crying like at the table, or maybe it was the next day when I went to the cafeteria at my law firm and I saw my friend Lisa, and I was like, I don't know. And she was like, you just have to say that's not going to work for you. And I was like, but I can't hem him in. I can't tell, and then, so I think there's a lot of, and so that lingers. Yeah. Every time you get interested in something, I get immediately I freeze like, oh God, is this going to take away the precious time we have together? And so.
Yeah. So there's this constant fear of scarcity.
Yes.
Of me, of
yes.
my time, of my attention and presence, and okay, yeah. Do you think our kids feel that too?
No, and I think that they're really, you've done such a superb job, and we got very lucky in the sense that they had a great village around them while they were very young, and you were always 100% with them when you were with them. It was sort of that idea of like, it's not how much time you spend with them, but it's the quality of the time you spend when you're with them. And now that you have been in attending and you've been out, 5-6 years now, the ages of the kids work out that they get a lot of you, a lot more than I think most other high-achieving, highly focused people in those industries can get with their kids.
Well, before we wrap up, any final tips for people in your former position that are going through something like this as the partner?
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter what it is that brings you joy for yourself, you try to lean into that as much as possible. I mean, those wonderful neurosurgery widows at this program, they seem to find some way to make it work. It might not have been with a career outside the home, but they seemed fulfilled and happy with what they were describing to me in the community they'd made. So fantastic. Like, that's great for people who want to work out. Yeah, I think just finding something that interests you and creating and maintaining that is the best antidote to the structure of residency in general.
Rebecca, you mentioned the village that it took with our children to survive these hard years. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah. I'm so grateful to everybody, and it ebbed and flowed as the children were different ages. But like, if you think about your mother who would, come over early in the morning in between the time our nanny would come, and because I had to leave extra early for a board meeting or whatever it was that I had to do. And I couldn't ask our dedicated, wonderful nanny to work more than a certain number of hours or she would tap out. So your mom would come over at like 6 a.m. and just hold down the fort until 8 o'clock when our babysitter would come. Or your dad, who would just come and like endlessly entertain the children and take them out for walks and put them on his shoulder. My sister, who would, try to do sleepovers with our daughter to give us a little break. And my dad, who really financially floated us for a long time, because it's hard to live in New York City on one income and not nearly enough for what you get in residency. So that was good. And it was also stressful. Like, oh my God, am I asking too much? Am I tapping out? Like, just the concept of even our babysitter, for example. I think that in large cities, when both couples are working, and I mean, both members of the couple are working, you rely heavily on, paid help. And I'm so grateful for our nannies that we had throughout those years. But there's this concept of oh my God, you take whatever you want. You can have a kidney of mine, because I can't have you, this whole house of cards is going to fall apart if you decide you don't want to work with us anymore. The kids love you. We've got the whole system. But it did feel towards the end, some members of the village were more positive than others. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were asking a lot of them that life was just so unpredictable
Exactly.
between my schedule and your schedule. And I think if we had been thousands of miles away without those people, it would be hard. I mean, maybe we would have had to lean on the other spouses of the people in the program, or I don't know what it would have been like.
I don't know if I could have leaned into my career as much because if I hadn't had those individuals, family and also like very trusted, paid help too, who were wonderful. I think that would have been really challenging. And as it was, I didn't feel like I could lean into my career. I think that...
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, you had this whole career, and not a small one, a big career, and you were dealing with all the stuff we've talked about. And did that affect you, or how did you manage to cope with that?
I think there was a lot of guilt and loss of confidence. I think there are other attorneys or other spouses who would have pushed ahead just as much and done whatever maybe it would be easier for other people. I didn't find it easy. I had a lot of guilt that I would arrive to work and be absolutely wrecked, and that you hadn't been home or you'd worked all weekend. And so I had done solo parenting all weekend with a toddler and a baby, and, still had to check in with work. And so then by the time I would get to the office on Monday morning, I was a wreck. And so I remember making a very deliberate decision to leave the firm. So leave my law firm and pursue an in-house career because you were going to pursue neurosurgery. So I said to myself, okay, we can't have somebody gunning for partner and somebody gunning to be a neurosurgeon at the same time, and also have the family life that I had envisioned in my head. You cannot have it all at the same time. I very happily took a step, I don't want to say back, but sideways to an in-house role, which I enjoyed immensely. And it was such a better fit for me. So that was a blessing. But yeah, I had certain years there where I felt pretty crappy about myself as a lawyer. And kind of resentful too of my colleagues who I saw were able to give more. And, that was really hard for me because I think intellectually I was just as interested, but I was just spent.
Yeah. The emotional bank was
and
the
physical bank. I mean, people who were volunteering for more trips abroad. I worked for a multinational corporation for 10 years. And, I remember I went to Egypt on one trip, and that was really interesting and exciting, but that was pre-kids. And then after that, I turned down it wasn't even an opportunity. I just sort of closed myself off being like, sorry, my husband's pursuing this major thing and I'm essentially a single mom. Don't look to me to do this trip or X, Y, or Z or take that project. And that's incredibly stagnating for my career. And I think I was resentful a little bit towards you, but it was mostly angry at myself that I couldn't hack it. I couldn't figure out a way to be A++ and everything else at the same time. So yeah, that was hard.
I mean, when you think of all of us as nodes in this interconnected matrix, my node was just completely unpredictable. And that affected not just you, but your colleagues, your boss, our kids. It branches out in all directions just because of my choice. And I don't think there's any way I could have realized that at the time, or you.
Exactly, which is why I think you unfairly, in my head, got pegged, or even with family, got pegged as the selfish one. You're so selfish for pursuing this residency. But that was the drumbeat of your entire residency, that Andrew was a selfish guy for doing this. I mean, do you remember hearing that kind of from anyone, or is that just more that I shielded you from that?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember much, but I don't doubt it. And I can understand how that...
But it's unfair. I mean, of course you're not being selfish. But it just, in the pursuit of this... It's very complicated. So yeah, I think I'm grateful that we have found some sort of balance or homeostasis, however you want to put it, in the sense that, you are very supportive of whatever I want to do with my career, if I want to dial it up or if I want to dial it down. And it's, but I definitely felt like I had years to make up for, because I saw my colleagues at my level, just like you. Everything has how many years out, I'm a 6-year attorney, 8th-year attorney, whatever. And I was seeing what my colleagues were doing, and I was slightly behind in my, I'd made it up that I was. So
yeah, you were being pulled back by my selfish choice. Tell me more about how everybody was calling me selfish, because I'm learning this for the first time in full consciousness.
No, it's not selfish. It's just that when everything revolves around your schedule, anything, whether it was a reunion with my college friends, it was always wait, where's it going to be? Is it going to be at your place in Jersey? Because if so, like I have to then get a car and do this all it was like, is Andrew available? Because if he's not available, then we can't do that there, because then it's going to be too much for Rebecca, because I'll have to, get a zip car and get 2 car seats and put him in the car and then drive to Jersey to see you guys. How about instead you just come visit me in Manhattan? So it felt like everything was sort of like on my terms. Also, I was asking a lot of my friends, because you were asking a lot of yourself and me, kind of. So you'd think I'd get good at asking for help, but it didn't. I didn't actually.
Well, that's something you definitely, or I certainly would never have realized going into this, is that how much this decision and this life can affect so many other people, even multiple relationships removed from me.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I mean, even my sister, my relationship with my sister, like everything, like she had to be incredibly patient in the sense of like, I couldn't, she not only had the loss of having an older sister who had a baby for the first time. And so she's like, oh, okay, I don't have my sister in the same way that I used to. But it was like, I could never leave the kids with you and just be like, sure, let's go for an afternoon. Let's do, it was years until I was able to meet her to do anything for more than a few hours. And like, that's a big loss for our relationship. But
do you think people who are choosing a career like this need to have these conversations beforehand with everyone they know, basically? Family, spouses, friends of spouses, everybody? Because it affects everyone, even whether they can predict that or not. I mean, is that something that should be discussed beforehand?
I think that more communication is always better. Sometimes I'm envious of the neurosurgeons that I know through you or I'm envious of their spouses if they met after residency. Because I'm like, you got a fully formed, like you missed all that junk. So I would say, like, if you're in it with somebody who's just starting out, yes, those conversations, but there's really no way to prepare anybody until you go through it.
So I would agree.
So I would encourage people to keep their village, keep their interests, and I guess keep the long game in mind. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could ask the same of you, whether you feel like the choice you made there's baggage there that you have to be more cognizant of, or do you feel like because of your choices, you approach things differently, or you are in a different position than your other guy friends?
You're not allowed to ask me questions. I'm the one who asks questions here.
You're so emotionally available. Thank you for that. Okay. I thought,
Can you ask me the question again?
No,
I
it
totally
was just a long, for another podcast. Okay, but I know that there are a lot of podcasts where the guest gets to ask a question of the host at the end.
Depends on what the question is.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I am very proud of you and of all that you do.
Well, thank you. Proud of you too. Not easy for either of us. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us. I really enjoyed our discussion.
Yeah, this was eye-opening. This was really giving me some food for thought.
We'll try not to go home and fight about it later.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was a pleasure. And it's very cathartic. So thanks, honey.
Okay. Happy to provide some catharsis. So remember, if you are pursuing a high-performance career, your partner is also, even if they're not the one there in scrubs. Thanks very much.